A 6-year-old girl sobbed alone on a cold sidewalk, clutching a tattered and dirty backpack. It was drizzling. People walked by, averting their eyes, as if a child's pain was invisible, until a woman, dressed in simple clothes and carrying an almost empty grocery bag, stopped. Meanwhile, a millionaire watched everything from inside his black SUV. What happened next would forever change everyone's destiny. Subscribe to the channel for heartwarming stories every day. The fine autumn. Rain fell on the city, turning the asphalt into a liquid mirror that reflected the headlights and the dull glow of storefronts. On the 30th floor of a glass skyscraper, the millionaire watched the cityscape with vacant eyes. The panoramic view that had cost millions no longer brought him any pleasure. His fingers drummed impatiently on the fine wood of the desk as he waited for the start of yet another board meeting. The immense office, decorated with contemporary art pieces and exclusive designer furniture, seemed as cold as his heart. Since his wife's death 5 years ago, that space had become his refuge and his prison. The glass walls isolated him from the outside world, just like the layers of indifference he had cultivated over the years. "Mr. Thompson, the meeting is ready to begin," his assistant announced for the 3rd time, with visible nervousness. "Cancel it. Tell them I have an urgent appointment," he replied, without taking his eyes off the window. "But sir, the shareholders are—" "I said cancel it," he interrupted with a sharp voice, finally turning to face her. The assistant nodded silently and closed the door. The millionaire felt an unusual warmth in his chest, a mixture of surprise and something akin to joy. "Ask Mrs. Higgins to come in, please," he said to the housekeeper, who nodded and withdrew. "Mary's here to see us," the little girl repeated, already jumping from her chair and running to the door. "Can I go greet her, Daddy? Can I?" "Of course," he replied, standing up as well. "Let's go together." They walked through the wide hallway to the entrance hall, where Mary waited, visibly uncomfortable with the opulence around her. She was wearing simple clothes, but clearly chosen with care, probably the best she had for special occasions. In her hands, she held a small package wrapped in colored paper. "Mary!" the girl shouted, running to hug her. The naturalness with which the child threw herself into the arms of that almost unknown woman moved the millionaire, reminding him again of the special bond they had formed in such a short time. "Hello, sweetie," Mary replied, bending down to return the hug. Her eyes met the millionaire's over the child's head, and she offered an almost imperceptible nod. "Welcome," he said, approaching. "I wasn't expecting your visit today, but it's a pleasure to have you." "I came to bring an answer to your proposal," she explained, straightening up, "and a gift for the little one." The girl looked at the package with curiosity. "A gift for me?" "Yes," Mary confirmed, handing her the package. "It's nothing expensive, but I thought you might like it." With the typical impatience of children, the girl tore the paper, revealing a storybook with a colorful cover and worn edges. "A storybook!" she exclaimed, flipping through the illustrated pages with enthusiasm. "It was mine when I was a kid," Mary explained. "My mom read it to me every night. I thought maybe your dad could read it to you." The millionaire felt a lump in his throat at the significance of that simple gift. It wasn't just a used book. It was a part of that woman's personal history, something of sentimental value that she had chosen to share with his daughter. "It's a very special gift," he said with sincere gratitude. "We'll take good care of it." "Can I show Mary my room, Daddy? Please?" the girl pleaded, hugging the book against her chest. The millionaire hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Of course, but don't take too long. It's getting late for you." As the girl pulled Mary by the hand, guiding her up the stairs to the 2nd floor, the millionaire watched them. A strange feeling of incompleteness washed over him, as if that domestic scene of almost ordinary simplicity was a fragment of a dream he had never dared to dream. He went to the office, giving them the space they needed, 15 minutes later, he heard soft knocks on the door. "Come in," he said, rising from the armchair where he had been contemplating the twilight through the window. Mary entered, closing the door silently behind her. "She fell asleep," she informed him, with the book next to her pillow. "I hope you don't mind. I told her the first story." "Not at all," he assured her. "Please sit down." She obeyed, choosing the edge of an armchair as if ready to get up at any moment. The contrast between her evident discomfort and his daughter's relaxed demeanor in her company did not go unnoticed by the millionaire. "So," he began, breaking the silence, "you came with an answer?" Mary nodded, her direct gaze meeting his. "I accept your proposal, but I have conditions." The millionaire raised his eyebrows, surprised. No one imposed conditions on him. It was usually the other way around. "I'm listening," he said, genuinely curious. "First, I want real autonomy in the project, no corporate interference or suggestions from your executives on how it should work." "Granted," he agreed without hesitation. "Second, the project has to be more than social marketing for your company. It has to make a real difference in the lives of the children. Real results, not just pretty pictures for annual reports." "Absolutely," he agreed again. "That's exactly what I expect." Mary took a deep breath before presenting her third condition. "And I want you to participate actively, not just as a financier, but physically present. Meeting the children, listening to their stories, being an example." This condition caught him off guard. His immediate instinct was to refuse. His schedule barely accommodated his current commitments, let alone regular visits to a social project. Besides, his presence would attract unwanted media attention, complicate security. But then he remembered the look on his face when he found his daughter at Mary's house. The vulnerability, the fear, the gratitude, and how that moment had changed something fundamental within him. "I agree," he said finally. "It won't be easy to reorganize my schedule, but I'll do it." A slight smile appeared on Mary's lips, the first he had seen directed at him, not his daughter. "Great," she said. "We can start next week." He extended his hand to seal the agreement, and the millionaire shook it, noticing the calluses on her palms that spoke of years of hard work, hands that had cared for his daughter with more gentleness than his own. "There's something else I want to show you," he said, rising and walking to a side table where a set of architectural blueprints was carefully rolled up. "The initial sketch of the center I'm envisioning. I'd like your opinion." He unrolled the blueprints on the table, revealing the design of a sprawling complex with green spaces, classrooms, recreational areas, and dormitories. Mary approached, her eyes scanning the drawings with growing interest. "It's impressive," she admitted, "but it seems—" "What?" he prompted when she hesitated. "It seems cold," she finally completed. "Perfect, functional, but without soul." Instead of taking offense, the millionaire chuckled softly. "Exactly what I thought when the architect presented it to me. That's why I want your help to revamp it. We need a place that's like your home. Small maybe, but homey." The surprised look she gave him was worth more than all the successful negotiations of his career. It was the look of someone who, for the first time, saw something unexpected in him, not the calculating millionaire, but a man capable of listening, of learning, of changing. "I think we can do that," she replied, turning back to the blueprints, "with some significant changes." And so, on that unlikely night, in the privacy of a luxurious office, an unlikely partnership began to take shape. A hospital janitor and a millionaire hunched over architectural drawings, reimagining not only a building, but the concept of care for vulnerable children. And perhaps, although neither dared to admit it yet, reimagining their own lives as well. The woman took off her worn coat and wrapped it around the girl's trembling shoulders. The fabric, though worn, retained a human warmth and the simple scent of lavender. Her own arms, now exposed to the rain, prickled with cold. But she didn't seem to notice. "What's your name, sweetie?" she asked gently, brushing strands of wet hair that stuck to the child's forehead. "I'm not allowed to talk to strangers," the girl replied between sobs, repeating the lesson she had been taught so many times. The woman smiled, understanding. "You're right. So my name is Mary. Now I'm not a stranger anymore, am I?" The girl hesitated, her little forehead furrowing in concentration, before answering timidly, My name... She stopped, confused. "Daddy says I shouldn't tell my name to people I don't know." "Your dad is very wise," the woman agreed. "And where is he now? We can look for him together." "I don't know. The nanny left. She said she was going to buy ice cream, but she didn't come back," the girl explained in a choked voice as new tears rolled down her cheeks, pinkened by the cold. Inside the parked SUV, the millionaire gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The only person he had trusted to care for his daughter had simply abandoned her. An icy fury grew in his chest as he watched the interaction between the unknown woman and his daughter. His first instinct was to get out of the SUV and run to them, but something stopped him. A mixture of curiosity and distrust. Who was this woman? What did she want? In the world he lived in, acts of kindness always came with ulterior motives. He activated the audio of the tracking device hidden in his daughter's necklace and listened to the conversation. "Do you know your father's name? Maybe we can call him," the woman suggested. The girl nodded vigorously and said her father's name with pride. Upon hearing the name, the woman blinked in surprise, but showed no recognition beyond that. She didn't associate the famous name with that abandoned child, or if she did, she showed no sign of opportunism or excitement. "I don't know his number," the girl continued sadly. "Only the nanny knows. She has everything on her cell phone." The woman looked around, visibly worried. The rain was increasing, and the sky was darkening rapidly. Passers-by hurried along, oblivious to the drama unfolding. On that sidewalk, "Are you hungry?" she asked, opening her grocery bag to show a package of cookies. "We can eat a little while we think about what to do." The girl nodded timidly. The woman opened the package and offered a cookie, which was accepted with trembling hands. As they ate in silence, the woman seemed to weigh her options. "You know, what? It's getting late and cold. My place is very close by. We can go there, you take a warm bath, eat something better than cookies, and we'll try to find your dad. What do you think?" The girl looked hesitant. "But Daddy says I shouldn't go to strangers' houses." "Your dad is right again," the woman replied with a gentle smile. "But sometimes we need to trust someone when we're in trouble. I promise I only want to help." In the SUV, the millionaire froze upon hearing the proposal. His heart raced. His whole life, built on distrust and control, screamed for him to intervene immediately. But something held him back. Perhaps it was the sincere tone in that woman's voice, or the way she respected the teachings he had given his daughter. Or maybe it was simply the desire to see how far that stranger would take her apparent kindness. The woman extended her hand to the girl, who after a moment of hesitation held it firmly. Together, they got up and began to walk along the wet sidewalk. The millionaire started the engine of the SUV. He would follow at a distance. He would observe every move. He was prepared to intervene at the first sign of danger. But something inside him, an almost forgotten voice from his own childhood, whispered that perhaps, just perhaps, there were genuinely good people in this cruel world he knew so well. As he drove slowly behind them, maintaining a safe distance, he couldn't help but notice how his daughter seemed to trust that stranger. The girl was now talking animatedly, gesturing with her free hand, while the woman listened to her with genuine attention. It was something he himself rarely did. The black SUV glided silently through the narrow streets, maintaining a calculated distance. Through the fogged glass, the millionaire watched his daughter walking hand in hand with the stranger. Something tightened in his chest, a long-forgotten feeling. Guilt? Fear? Or was it simply the realization of his own failure as a father? His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was his lawyer. "I've already arranged everything," said the grave voice on the other end of the line. "A security team is on its way. We can charge her with kidnapping, extortion, and—" "No," the millionaire interrupted with a sharp voice. "Not yet. I want to see what she's going to do." "But, sir, your daughter could be in danger. This woman is clearly—" "I'm watching every move," he replied coldly. "Keep the team on standby. I'll intervene when I deem it necessary." He hung up before the lawyer could protest. His eyes returned to his daughter, who was now entering a narrow alley following the woman. The millionaire felt a pang in his chest. He couldn't follow by SUV through that passage. For a moment, he considered abandoning the vehicle and following them on foot, but that would mean revealing his presence. Quickly, he checked the tracking device. The red dot showed that his daughter was moving slowly through the alley. There were no signs of immediate danger. He decided to drive around the block to wait for them at the alley's exit. As he drove, his thoughts wandered. When was the last time he had really talked to his daughter? Asked about her day, her preferences, her fears. He knew she liked unicorns and the exact shade of pink she preferred for her dresses, but that information came from reports from the nannies and purchases made by his personal assistant. Since his wife's death, he had distanced himself from his daughter, not physically, as he had ensured that she had the best room in the mansion, the best clothes, the best toys, but emotionally, he had built an impenetrable wall. Looking at her was like looking into a mirror that reflected the absence of the only woman he had loved. He parked at the alley's exit and waited, his eyes fixed on the tracking device. The red dot slowly approached. After a few agonizing minutes, the woman and the girl emerged from the narrow passage. The child was now smiling timidly, still holding the stranger's hand confidently. The millionaire watched as they entered a simple neighborhood, a collection of small old houses arranged around a common courtyard. He waited a few minutes before getting out of the SUV. He approached discreetly, staying in the shadows. Through a window without curtains, he could glimpse the interior of a modest room. The woman lit an old stove while his daughter was sitting at the table, wrapped in a colorful blanket. The contrast between that simple environment and the luxurious quarters the girl was accustomed to couldn't be greater. However, there was something in that cramped and worn space that the mansion lacked, an air of coziness, of home. His phone vibrated again. The lawyer was insisting. "Sir, please reconsider. We have a team ready to intervene. The risk is too great. If something happens to your daughter—" "Nothing will happen," he replied with a confidence he didn't feel. "Remain on standby." Inside, the woman was preparing a simple soup, using basic ingredients she had bought earlier. She spoke naturally with the girl, who responded with growing animation. Through the audio device, the millionaire could hear fragments of the conversation. "And then, after we eat, we can try to call your dad," the woman was saying. "Or maybe the police, they can help find him." Upon hearing the mention of the police, the millionaire tensed. The last thing he wanted was a public scandal. His name in the headlines associated with the abandonment of a child, his company's stocks plummeting, investors withdrawing support. No, that couldn't happen. But there was something deeper bothering him. The shame. Not for the potential headlines, but for the truth they would reveal. An absent father, unable to protect his own daughter, depending on strangers to take care of what should be his most precious possession. For the first time in years, he felt truly vulnerable, unprotected, like that child abandoned on the cold sidewalk. "Do you like stories?" the woman asked the girl as she served the steaming soup in simple ceramic bowls. "I do," the child replied. "But no one tells me stories. I only read them in books." "No one? Not even your dad?" The girl shook her head negatively. "Daddy is always busy. He's very important." The millionaire felt each word like a stab. Outside, in the growing darkness, he remained motionless, torn between the shame that consumed him and the fear that still paralyzed him. Part of him wanted to go in, reveal himself, thank the woman, and take his daughter home. Another part, however, the part built with years of cynicism and distrust, still suspected ulterior motives. And there was a third part, perhaps the most painful, the one that feared the moment when his daughter would see him. See not the powerful millionaire that everyone feared and respected, but the absent father who was unable to dedicate time or affection to her. The aroma of the homemade soup filled the small room, mixing with the cozy warmth that emanated from the old stove. The woman had improvised a warm bath for the girl, using a large basin and water heated in pans. Now, in borrowed clothes that hung loosely on her small body, the child seemed more comfortable, although still visibly exhausted by the trauma of abandonment. "This soup is delicious," the girl commented, blowing carefully on the spoon before taking it to her mouth. "It doesn't taste like the one we have at home." "No?" the woman asked with genuine curiosity. "What's the soup like at your house?" "It's more perfect," the child replied after a moment of reflection. "It always looks and tastes the same. Our cook says she follows a special recipe, but she never changes it." The woman smiled, noticing how the girl savored each spoonful as if it were a discovery. "Sometimes the simplest things are the ones that have the most flavor," she commented softly. "This soup is just what I had in the fridge. A little potato, carrot, onion, nothing special. I like it," the girl stated with conviction. "It tastes like what, sweetie?" "Like care," the child completed, surprised by her own conclusion. Outside, the millionaire continued his silent vigil. The rain had eased to a fine drizzle, but he barely noticed the dampness that soaked his custom-made Italian suit. Through the fogged glass, he watched the domestic scene with a mixture of confusion and fascination. There was something hypnotic in the simplicity of that moment. His phone vibrated again, the lawyer, insistent. He hung up without answering. He couldn't take his eyes off the window. Not now, when his daughter was smiling in a way that he rarely witnessed at home. Inside, the conversation continued. "And you, do you live here alone?" the girl asked, looking around with childlike curiosity. The woman nodded. "Yes, just me. It's small, but it's my home." "Don't you get sad not having anyone?" The question, with the typical frankness of children, prompted a moment of silence. The woman seemed to weigh her words before answering. "Sometimes, yes, but I have friends and neighbors, and I work in a place where I meet a lot of people every day." "Where do you work?" the girl questioned as she pushed her empty bowl towards the center of the table. "At a hospital, a big hospital downtown. I help clean the rooms and hallways so that sick people can recover in a clean environment." "Like a doctor?" The woman laughed softly. "No, I'm not that important. I'm just one of the people who keeps the hospital running." "Daddy says all jobs are important," the girl commented seriously. "Even the ones nobody sees." The millionaire felt a lump in his throat. It was true, he said that occasionally during interviews, part of his carefully constructed public image. But hearing his daughter repeat his words with such conviction hit him in an unexpected way. Did she really pay attention during their rare interactions? Inside the house, the conversation continued. The woman was now asking about school, friends, favorite activities, simple questions, but which received enthusiastic answers from the girl. Questions that he himself should ask, but never found the time or courage to ask them. "And your dad, what's he like?" the woman finally asked as she cleared the dishes. The question hung in the air for a few moments. Outside, the millionaire held his breath. "He's big," the girl began, choosing her words carefully. "And important. Everybody knows him." "It must be interesting to have a famous dad," the woman commented. "I guess so, but he's almost never home, and when he is, he seems sad." The simplicity of the observation hit the millionaire like a punch to the gut. Sad. Was that how his daughter saw him? Not as the powerful man who had built an empire, but as someone perpetually unhappy. Sad? Why? The woman questioned gently. "I don't know," the girl replied, shrugging her shoulders. "I think it's because of Mom. She went to heaven when I was born. The nanny says he can't look at me without remembering her." The millionaire took a step back, as if the words could physically reach him. His legs faltered, and he needed to lean against the damp wall of the alley. Was that what they told her? That her very existence was a cause of pain for her father? Inside the house, the woman had knelt down in front of the girl, holding her small hands. "Listen, sweetie, I don't know your dad, but I'm sure he loves you very much. Sometimes adults get sad for reasons they don't even fully understand themselves. It doesn't mean it's your fault." "Do you think so?" the child asked in a fragile voice. "I'm sure of it," the woman affirmed. "And you know what? I think he must be very worried right now, looking for you." Outside, the millionaire felt something warm and wet run down his face. He brought his hand to his face and realized, astonished, that he was crying. He hadn't cried since his wife's funeral. He had promised himself that he would never show such weakness again. But now, hidden in the shadows of an unknown alley, far from the eyes of his executives, shareholders, and employees, he allowed himself to feel the pain, the guilt, the regret. All the emotions he had repressed for years now overflowed, mixing with the rain that began to fall again. Inside the house, the woman was now spreading a colorful blanket over the small, worn couch. "You can sleep here tonight," she was saying. "Early tomorrow morning we'll look for your dad, I promise." The millionaire watched as his daughter settled on the simple couch, wrapped in the blanket that seemed to have been patched several times. The woman sat in a nearby chair and began to tell a story, an invented narrative about brave princesses and kind dragons. Her melodious voice soon lulled the child, whose eyes began to droop. For the first time, he saw his daughter's bedtime routine, something that, in his own house, he had always delegated to employees and nannies. And that revelation hit him with devastating force. He was a stranger in the life of the only being who should be the center of his world. The night wore on slowly as the millionaire remained there, a silent sentinel in the damp darkness. The rain had stopped completely, leaving in the air that peculiar smell of wet asphalt and earth. Inside the small house, the lights had been reduced to a dim lamp next to the couch where his daughter slept. The woman moved silently through the room, tidying up here and there, occasionally stopping to check if the child was well covered. Her gestures were gentle, imbued with the genuine care that the millionaire observed with growing fascination. It was like watching a dance in a language he had long forgotten, the language of selfless affection. The tracking device on his cell phone indicated that his daughter was safe, her small heart beating in a quiet rhythm of sleep. The audio captured only the child's serene breathing and the soft sounds of the woman preparing for bed. Around midnight, the woman finally retired, lying down on a thin mattress she had improvised on the floor, giving up her own bed for the child. One last look to make sure everything was all right. And then the lights went out completely. The millionaire moved away from the window, walking a few steps back while massaging his neck, sore from the tense position he had maintained for hours. He returned to the SUV, sitting heavily in the driver's seat. The luxurious interior, with its soft leather and fine wood trim, now seemed absurdly ostentatious, almost obscene in comparison to the dignified simplicity of that small home he had just observed. He started the engine just to warm the environment and checked the messages on his cell phone. Dozens of missed calls from his lawyer, his personal assistant, the head of security. The world he had built was in turmoil with his sudden disappearance. But for the first time in many years, that world seemed distant and irrelevant. He leaned his head back on the seat and closed his eyes. Images from his own childhood came to the surface. Fragments of memory that he thought were buried forever. The small apartment where he had grown up, his mother sewing late into the night to pay the bills, the smell of beans cooking slowly, stretching the little they had to last the whole week. He had promised himself that his only child would never know that life of deprivation, and he had kept that promise. His daughter had everything money could buy. But as he watched her in that simple house, smiling as she ate soup made with cheap ingredients, he realized that perhaps he had deprived the girl of something much more valuable than material possessions. As the sun began to rise on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange, the millionaire had already made a decision that contradicted everything his lawyer, his partners, and his social circle would expect of him. Inside the small house, the woman was already awake. Through the window, he watched her preparing a simple breakfast: toast, a little butter, a glass of milk. His daughter was still asleep, wrapped in the colorful blanket. "Good morning, sleepyhead," the woman said gently when the child finally opened her eyes. "Did you sleep well?" The girl rubbed her eyes and nodded, looking around as if to confirm where she was. For a moment, she seemed confused, but soon her face lit up with recognition. "I dreamed about Daddy," she said, sitting up on the couch. "He was here, watching us through the window." The millionaire froze, his hand suspended in the air as he was about to open the SUV door. Had he been seen? "It was just a dream, sweetie," the woman replied, placing a piece of toast on a plate. "But today we're going to find him, I promise. After breakfast we can go to the police station. They'll know how to locate your dad." As she watched the girl eat, the woman seemed thoughtful. "You know, I've been thinking, it's strange that your dad hasn't shown up here. If you disappeared yesterday afternoon, surely he must have noticed your absence by now. There should be police officers looking for you, your face on television." The millionaire felt a wave of shame. She was right. Any normal father would have mobilized heaven and earth to find his missing child, but he had preferred to observe, analyze, wait. Why? What was he testing exactly? "Daddy has a lot of meetings," the girl replied, chewing slowly. "Maybe he hasn't come home yet. Sometimes he travels for days." The woman frowned, visibly disturbed by the response. "And who takes care of you when he's away?" "The nanny," the girl said simply, "but she left yesterday." A heavy silence fell over the small room. The woman seemed to process this information, her face alternating between worry and a growing understanding. "Does your dad know where you are?" she asked finally, her voice controlled so as not to alarm the child. The girl shook her head negatively. "I don't think so. The cell phone stayed with the nanny. She always called him." The millionaire watched everything through the window, his heart aching. The conclusion was obvious. In the eyes of that woman, he seemed like a negligent father who hadn't even noticed the disappearance of his own daughter. And the worst part was that he couldn't contest that impression. It was at that moment that he made his decision. He got out of the SUV, straightened his rumpled suit after the uncomfortable night, and walked to the door of the small house. He hesitated for an instant, a final internal battle between pride and humility, before raising his hand and knocking 3 times. Inside the house, everything silenced. He heard the woman's voice, low and tense. "Stay here, honey. I'll see who it is." Footsteps approached the door. The millionaire took a deep breath, preparing himself for what was to come. The door opened slowly, revealing the woman with a cautious expression that quickly turned to shock upon recognizing him. Her eyes widened, and a hand rose instinctively to her lips. You're... "I'm her father," he confirmed in a hoarse voice, conscious of the image he projected. A man in an expensive suit, disheveled after a sleepless night. "I've come to get my daughter." "Daddy!" The childish voice cut through the silence, and before any of the adults could react, the girl ran across the small room, bypassing the woman paralyzed at the door, and threw herself into her father's arms. For a fleeting instant, the millionaire hesitated, unaccustomed to physical contact. Then, as if something dormant awakened inside him, he wrapped his daughter in a tight embrace, lifting her off the ground. The childish scent of simple soap and innocence filled his nostrils, awakening an emotion that he had long kept buried. "You came to get me," the girl whispered against his neck, as if she couldn't believe it. "Of course I came," he replied, his voice choked with feelings he couldn't name. "I'll always come for you." The woman watched the scene with a mixture of relief and confusion. Her restless hands smoothed the worn apron she wore over her simple clothes. How did you know she was here?" she asked finally, her voice almost a whisper. The millionaire lowered his daughter slowly, but kept a protective hand on her shoulder. He met the woman's direct gaze, realizing for the first time the dignity that emanated from her, despite the worn clothes and humble surroundings. "May I come in?" he asked instead of answering. "I think we have a lot to talk about." She nodded, stepping aside to make way. The contrast couldn't be starker. The imposing-looking man, even with the rumpled suit, entering the small room where there was barely enough space for everyone to fit. "I made toast, Daddy," announced the girl with enthusiasm, pulling him by the hand. "And there's milk that's much tastier than ours." The millionaire allowed himself to be guided to the small table, where he sat awkwardly on the wooden chair that seemed too fragile for his build. The woman remained standing, visibly uncomfortable with the presence of that illustrious visitor in her modest home. "Please, sit down," he asked with a gentleness that surprised himself. "This is your home. I'm the intruder here." She obeyed reluctantly, sitting at the other end of the table. The girl, oblivious to the tension between the adults, chattered animatedly about the adventure she had lived, the bath in the large basin, the delicious soup, the bedtime stories. The millionaire listened with genuine attention, realizing how rarely he dedicated that kind of attention to his daughter. When she finally paused, he turned to the woman. "I owe you a thank you," he said sincerely, "for taking care of her when I failed." The woman held his gaze. Anyone would have done the same. "No," he contradicted, shaking his head. "Many people passed by her yesterday, ignoring a child crying alone in the rain. You were the only one who stopped, the only one who cared." A silence laden with meaning hung between them, until the woman tilted her head slightly, as if accepting the thanks. "How did you know where to find her?" she asked again, with a note of distrust in her voice. The millionaire hesitated. Would the truth make him seem even more negligent, or worse, a disturbed stalker? He decided on honesty, regardless of the consequences. "A tracking device," he confessed, pointing to the delicate necklace the daughter wore for safety. "When I realized she had left the property, I came looking for her." The woman's eyes widened in comprehension. "So you knew the whole time? You were watching us?" He nodded, unable to look away from the silent accusation in her eyes. "Why? Why didn't you come immediately? Your daughter was scared, alone, thinking she had been abandoned. The girl looked from one to the other, her animated expression fading in the face of the growing tension. The millionaire ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of nervousness. At first, I thought it was just a glitch in the system. Then when I saw that it was real, I was afraid it was some kind of scam, an elaborate kidnapping. In my position, these things happen. The woman shook her head, incredulous. She's a child, a scared child needing her father. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. You're right, he admitted, lowering his eyes. The truth is, I don't know how to be a father. Since my wife... He stopped himself, conscious of his daughter's presence. I'm afraid of failing, of not being enough. The unexpected confession seemed to disarm the woman. Her gaze softened slightly. Nobody knows how to be a parent, she said more gently. Everyone just tries to do the best they can. Not everyone has the same resources to try, he observed, looking around the small room that, despite its simplicity, exuded care and coziness. A slight blush colored the woman's cheeks. Money doesn't raise children, sir. Love does. The profound simplicity of the statement silenced him. For a moment, he remembered his own mother, working 3 jobs to support him after his father's death. They never had much, but he never doubted her love. The nanny never came back, the girl said suddenly, breaking the silence. She said she was going to buy ice cream, but she left. The millionaire felt a renewed wave of fury against the woman who had abandoned his daughter, followed by an overwhelming guilt. If he had been a more present father, would he have known what kind of person he was hiring to care for his most precious possession? She won't be working for us anymore, he assured his daughter before turning back to the woman. I need to take her home now, but before... He took a deep breath. I would like to know your name. Mary, she replied simply. My name is Mary. Mary, he repeated, as if testing the sound. A beautiful name, simple, but full of meaning. She shrugged, a gesture that seemed to say that it was just a name, nothing special. I would like to compensate you properly for what you did, he continued, reaching into the inner pocket of his suit jacket, where he always kept a considerable amount of cash. Her face hardened instantly. I didn't do it for money. I know, he hastened to say, realizing his mistake. But still, no, she repeated firmly. I did what any decent human being would do. I won't accept payment for it. The millionaire felt uncomfortably exposed, as if his habitual attitude of solving everything with money had been unmasked as the weakness it really was. Slowly, he withdrew his empty hand from his pocket. I understand, he said with a growing respect. In that case, I would at least like to offer my gratitude. And maybe... He hesitated. Maybe we can see each other again. Have coffee, talk, if you're willing. The surprise in her eyes was evident. She clearly didn't expect that kind of proposal from a man like him. Why? She asked directly, without mincing words. The honesty of the question caught him off guard. Why indeed? What could he have in common with this simple woman, besides the brief encounter mediated by his daughter? Because you made me see something I had forgotten, he replied sincerely. Something about myself, about my daughter, about what really matters. Her eyes studied him for a long moment, as if searching for the truth behind his words. Finally, she nodded slightly. Maybe, she replied without committing herself. It was more than he expected and somehow less than he desired. He stood up, extending his hand to his daughter. Come on, sweetie. It's time for us to go home. The girl hugged the woman tightly, an embrace full of genuine childish gratitude. Thank you for the soup, for the stories, and for the bath in the big basin, she said seriously. Mary smiled, returning the hug. It was a pleasure, honey. The millionaire watched the interaction, feeling a strange mixture of gratitude and envy for the ease with which that stranger connected with his daughter, a connection that he himself struggled to establish. When they finally left the small house, he took his daughter's hand, something he rarely did. The sensation of her small, trusting hand in his was strangely comforting. Together they walked to the parked SUV. "Daddy!" the girl called as he opened the passenger door. "Why were you watching us through the window last night? Like in my dream?" The question froze him. So, she had seen him after all. He faced his daughter's curious eyes, realizing that he owed her at least a portion of the truth. "I was trying to understand something very important," he replied finally. "Something that I think I finally understood." The following days brought a strange quiet to the millionaire's mansion. The absence of the nanny, who was formally fired, with a cold and precise phone call, created a vacuum in the imposing hallways. Without her constant presence, mediating the interaction between father and daughter, there remained only the uncomfortable silence of two people who, despite the blood tie, were practically strangers to each other. The millionaire had cancelled all his meetings that week, something unprecedented in his career, claiming a family emergency. His executives and shareholders were in turmoil, speculating about possible crises or secret mergers. None of them would imagine the truth, that the man feared for his coldness in business was, at that moment, sitting awkwardly on the floor of his daughter's room, trying to understand the rules of a colorful board game. "No, Daddy," the girl laughed, shaking her head with the inverted patience of someone teaching an adult. "You can't move that piece like that. You have to follow the yellow arrows." "Oh, right," he replied, feigning comprehension, although the childish logic of the game seemed more complex to him than many corporate negotiations he had ever conducted. Those moments, uncomfortable and precious, were often interrupted by insistent calls. His lawyer especially seemed unable to accept the millionaire's refusal to prosecute the woman, Mary, for what he called an obvious case of temporary kidnapping. "Please reconsider," insisted the voice on the phone. "This woman had access to your daughter. She knows where you live. She knows your routine. It's a liability, a vulnerability that we can't afford." "No," the millionaire replied, with a firmness that ended any discussion. "The matter is closed." On the fourth day after the incident, the millionaire received a different call. It was his head of public relations, his voice tight with concern. "Sir, we have a problem, a big problem." "What is it?" he asked, feeling his stomach clench. "The story leaked. Your abandoned daughter, the missing nanny, the unknown woman who took her in. It's everywhere. Blogs, news sites, social media. People are, well, the opinions aren't favorable towards you." The millionaire closed his eyes, feeling the familiar pressure of a crisis. But this time it was different. It wasn't a stock market crash or a lost contract. It was his personal life, his daughter, his failure as a father exposed to the eyes of the world. "Send me the links," he asked, keeping his voice controlled. Minutes later, his cell phone was flooded with notifications. He sat down in his office, turned off the intercom, and began to read. The headlines were merciless. Neglectful billionaire, abandoned daughter saved by hospital janitor. The price of power when the super-rich outsource parenthood. Anonymous heroine, meet the woman who did what a millionaire father couldn't. There were pictures of Mary leaving the hospital where she worked, her face partially covered by her hand, raised to shield herself from the flashes. Old photos of him with his daughter at rare public events, analyzed to prove his parental coldness. Even a blurry photo of the girl entering Mary's small house, clearly taken by some opportunistic paparazzo who was now selling the story to tabloids. The worst were the comments, thousands of them, distilling judgment, anger, scorn. "Money doesn't buy character," Someone take that child away from him. Poor girl growing up without love. Each word was like a physical blow, not because they were lies, but because they touched on truths that he himself was only beginning to confront. His phone rang again, the lawyer sounding almost triumphant. "See what's happening, we need to act immediately. I suggest a lawsuit against that woman, Mary. We can allege manipulation of the situation, maybe even insinuate that she knew the nanny, that it was all planned to extort money." "She refused to accept a penny from me," interrupted the millionaire, his voice dangerously low. "Of course, part of the plan. Build an image of sanctity to then ask for more. I know the type. She's probably negotiating with some publisher to release a book, or with producers for a movie." Enough. The word was said with such authority that the lawyer silenced instantly. "You're fired." "What?" "But I just..." "Clear your desk by the end of the day, and know that if any insinuation against that woman appears in the press, I'll know exactly who to sue." He hung up before the man could respond and let the cell phone drop onto the desk. His world was crumbling, but in a way he couldn't completely. Regret, like a necessary demolition before a reconstruction. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was the housekeeper, looking uncomfortable. "Sir, there are reporters at the gates, a lot of them, and the little one is asking why she can't go to the garden today." The millionaire nodded slowly. Tell her we're going to have a picnic inside. In the winter garden, maybe. With those little sandwiches she likes." The housekeeper seemed surprised, but nodded and withdrew. The millionaire turned to the window, watching the figures of the reporters clustered beyond the gates of his property, like wolves circling a wounded prey. His cell phone vibrated with a message from the head of security. "We located the nanny. She's in another state, trying to sell the story to a magazine. We intercepted before publication, awaiting instructions." The millionaire felt a wave of fury, followed by a deep weariness. How many people in his life saw his daughter, the innocent child who should be protected at all costs, as mere merchandise, a bridge to his fortune? "Instructions, full file to the legal department," he replied, typing quickly. "Lawsuit for child abandonment, breach of confidentiality, moral damages. No settlement." Message sent. He left the office and walked through the hallways of the mansion until he heard his daughter's voice coming from the winter garden. He stopped at the door, watching her as she meticulously arranged a picnic blanket on the floor with the help of the housekeeper. "Daddy!" she exclaimed upon seeing him, her face lighting up in a way that made his heart ache. "We're having a picnic just like the one Mary told me about, those in the park with ants and everything." "No ants, I hope," he replied with a shy smile, entering the room. "May I join you?" The question, so simple, seemed to surprise both his daughter and the housekeeper. For a fleeting moment, he saw in the girl's eyes the same expression he had found in the online comments. Doubt, surprise at the demonstration of interest. Was that what his daughter expected of him? So little, just to be present. The realization hit him with renewed force. "Of course, Daddy," she replied finally, indicating a space on the blanket. "You can sit here, where I put the blue napkin." The millionaire knelt awkwardly, his fine suit in ridiculous contrast to the domestic scene. The housekeeper, looking relieved not to be needed anymore, withdrew discreetly. "You know what else I liked about Mary's house?" the girl asked as she arranged small sandwiches on a plate. "It was small, but it was homey." "Homey?" he repeated, trying to understand. "Yeah, like a hug. Our house is big and pretty, but sometimes it feels cold. Like when you're sick and have a fever, you know? Shivering even under the blanket." The simple words pierced him. His daughter, with the innocent wisdom of children, had summarized in one sentence what he had never managed to articulate about his own life, an existence of material wealth and emotional poverty. a cold marble palace built on the tomb of his ability to connect. "I understand," he said softly. "And what can we do to make our house more homey?" The girl seemed to reflect deeply, her forehead furrowed in concentration. "Maybe," she began hesitantly, "maybe we need more people. Good people, like Mary." The millionaire felt something break and recompose inside himself, a resolution taking shape, crystalline and irrevocable. "Maybe you're right," he replied in a hoarse voice. "Maybe that's exactly what we need." That night, after putting his daughter to bed, something he had done for the first time in years, the millionaire sat down in his office and began to write, not an email, not a corporate memo, but a letter addressed to a simple woman who unknowingly had started a silent revolution in his life. The letter remained on the desk for 3 days, rewritten several times until each word conveyed exactly what the millionaire wanted to say. It was not a legal document nor a business proposal, but a genuinely human communication, something he had long ceased to practice. On the morning of the 4th day, while the media was still buzzing with speculation about the nanny scandal, the millionaire drove himself to the hospital where Mary worked. He parked his discreet car, not the ostentatious Bentley he usually used, on a side street, and waited for the time he had discovered to be the end of her shift. He saw her leave through the back entrance, probably to avoid the reporters who were still pursuing her. She wore simple clothes, carried a worn bag on her shoulder, and there was something in her posture, a natural dignity, a quiet strength that impressed him more and more. "Mary," he called softly, approaching. She turned quickly, startled, and her eyes widened as she recognized him. For a moment, she seemed to consider running away, but soon straightened her shoulders, facing him directly. "What are you doing here?" she asked bluntly. He held out the envelope with the letter, feeling strangely vulnerable. "I needed to talk to you. Away from the cameras, the lawyers, all of this." She looked at the envelope without taking it. "I told you I don't want money." "It's not money," he assured her. "It's an invitation. Please read it." Hesitantly, she accepted the envelope. An invitation to what? To help. Not me, nor my public image, but my daughter, and many other children. Mary narrowed her eyes, distrustful, but finally opened the envelope and began to read. Her face transitioned from suspicion to surprise, and then to something he couldn't decipher completely. "Are you serious?" she asked after finishing the reading. "You want me to coordinate a social project for vulnerable children?" He nodded. "No one better than you. What you did for my daughter, out of pure altruism, showed me something I had been ignoring for years. There are children like her, lost, scared, needing someone who really cares, everywhere. Many without the privilege of the safety net that money provides." Mary carefully folded the letter, her face thoughtful. "Why me? I have no training for this. I'm not a social worker, nor an educator, nor—" "You have something more valuable than diplomas," he interrupted gently. "You have heart and integrity, two rare things in my world." A shadow of a smile touched her lips. "Your world seems like a lonely place." The observation, so simple and so accurate, caught him off guard. "It is," he admitted after a moment. "But I'm trying to change it, starting with my daughter, and with this project, if you accept." Mary looked again at the letter in her hands. "I would need to leave my job here, with all the guarantees and benefits preserved, and a salary commensurate with the responsibility of the position. It's not charity, Mary, it's recognition of value." She seemed to weigh the proposal, her eyes revealing the internal conflict. "And what would the newspapers say? That you bought me? That you're trying to silence the story with a job?" It was a legitimate concern, and the millionaire appreciated her frankness. "They'll say what they want, they always do, but we'll know the truth." "And what is the truth?" she asked, her penetrating gaze seeming to reach parts of him that he kept hidden even from himself. "The truth," he replied slowly, choosing his words carefully, "is that I need to relearn how to be human, how to be a father. And you seem to be the only person I've met in recent years who can show me how." The raw sincerity of the confession hung between them like something alive. Mary studied him for a long moment, as if searching for signs of manipulation or falsehood. Finally, she nodded almost imperceptibly. "I'll think about it," she promised, putting the letter in her bag. "It's a big decision." "Of course," he agreed, feeling a curious mixture of disappointment and hope. "Take all the time you need." As she walked away, he realized something strange. He wasn't used to waiting. In his world, decisions were made instantly, contracts signed under pressure, results demanded immediately. The idea of awaiting the decision of a hospital janitor was completely alien to his experience. And yet, it seemed right. The following days brought rapid changes. The millionaire called a press conference, something he rarely did, and faced the media head-on. "Yes, I failed as a father," he admitted before the cameras, ignoring the shocked whispers of his advisors. "And I am grateful to an extraordinary woman who cared for my daughter when I couldn't, or didn't know how." The headlines the next day were as merciless as the previous ones, but with a slightly different tone. "Billionaire admits parental failure." The man behind the myth, vulnerability surprises at press conference. Meanwhile, life in the mansion transformed subtly. The millionaire completely reorganized his schedule, blocking out afternoons to be with his daughter. They had dinner together. He helped her with her homework, listening patiently as she read aloud, even when his mind occasionally wandered to pending business matters. It was during one of these dinners, a week after the press conference, that the mansion's doorbell rang. "Who could it be at this hour?" he murmured to himself, checking the clock. It was almost 8 in the evening, well after business hours. The housekeeper appeared at the door of the dining room, looking slightly embarrassed. "Sir, there's a visitor. She says she was invited by you, but we have no record of any appointment." "Who is it?" he asked, putting down his napkin. "A lady, named Mary, sir." The girl dropped her fork, her face lighting up instantly. "Mary is here. She came to visit us." The millionaire felt an unusual warmth in his chest, a mixture of surprise and something akin to joy. "Ask her to come in, please," he said to the housekeeper, who nodded and withdrew. "Mary's here to see us," the little girl repeated, already jumping from her chair and running to the door. "Can I go greet her, Daddy? Can I?" "Of course," he replied, standing up as well. "Let's go together." They walked down the wide hallway to the foyer, where Maria waited, visibly uncomfortable with the opulence around her. She wore a simple outfit, but clearly chosen with care, probably her Sunday best. In her hands, she held a small package wrapped in colorful paper. "Maria!" the little girl shouted, running to hug her. The natural way the child threw herself into the arms of this almost stranger touched the millionaire, reminding him again of the special bond they had formed in such a short time. "Hi, sweetie," Maria replied, bending down to return the hug. Her eyes met the millionaire's over the child's head, and she offered a nearly imperceptible nod. "Welcome," he said, approaching. "I wasn't expecting you today, but it's a pleasure to have you." "I came to give you an answer to your proposal," she explained, straightening up, "and a gift for the little one." The girl looked at the package with curiosity. "A present? For me?" "Yes," Maria confirmed, handing her the package. "It's nothing fancy, but I thought you might like it." With the typical impatience of children, the girl tore the paper, revealing a storybook with a colorful cover and worn edges. "A storybook!" she exclaimed, flipping through the illustrated pages with enthusiasm. "It was mine when I was a kid," Maria explained. "My mom read to me from it every night. I thought maybe your dad could read it to you." The millionaire felt a lump in his throat at the meaning of that simple gift. It wasn't just a used book. It was a part of this woman's personal history, something of sentimental value that she had chosen to share with his daughter. "It's a very special gift," he said, with sincere gratitude. "We'll take good care of it." "Can I show Maria my room, Daddy?" "Please," the girl pleaded, hugging the book to her chest. The millionaire hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Sure, but don't take too long. It's getting late for you." Vai. As the girl pulled Maria by the hand, leading her up the stairs towards the second floor, the millionaire watched them go. A strange feeling of incompleteness washed over him, as if that domestic scene of almost ordinary simplicity was a fragment of a dream he had never even dreamed. He headed to his study, giving them the space they needed. 15 minutes later, he heard soft knocks on the door. "Come in," he said, rising from the armchair where he had been contemplating the twilight through the window. Maria entered, closing the door silently behind her. "She fell asleep," she informed him, with the book next to her pillow. "I hope you don't mind. I told her the first story." "Not at all," he assured her. "Please, sit down." She obeyed, choosing the edge of an armchair, as if ready to get up at any moment. The contrast between her obvious discomfort and the relaxed posture of his daughter in her company did not go unnoticed by the millionaire. "So," he began, breaking the silence, "you came with an answer?" Maria nodded, her direct gaze meeting his. "I accept your proposal, but I have conditions." The millionaire raised his eyebrows, surprised. No one imposed conditions on him. It was usually the other way around. "I'm listening," he said, genuinely curious. "First, I want real autonomy in the project. No corporate interference or suggestions from your executives on how it should work." "Granted," he agreed without hesitation. "Second, the project has to be more than just social marketing for your company. It has to make a real difference in the lives of the children. Real results, not just pretty pictures for annual reports." "Absolutely," he agreed again. "That's exactly what I hope for." Maria took a deep breath before presenting her third condition. "And I want you to participate actively, not just as a financier, but physically present. Getting to know the children, listening to their stories, being a role model." This condition caught him by surprise. His immediate instinct was to refuse. His schedule barely accommodated his current commitments, let alone regular visits to a social project. Moreover, his presence would attract unwanted media attention, complicate security. But then he remembered the look on her face when he found his daughter at Maria's place. The vulnerability, the fear, the gratitude, and how that moment had changed something fundamental within him. "I agree," he said finally. "It won't be easy to reorganize my schedule, but I'll do it." A slight smile appeared on Maria's lips, the first he had seen directed at him, not his daughter. "Great," she said. "We can start next week." She extended her hand to formalize the agreement, and the millionaire shook it, noting the calluses on her palms that spoke of years of hard work. Hands that had cared for his daughter with more gentleness than his own. "There's something else I want to show you," he said, rising and walking to a side table where a set of architectural blueprints was carefully rolled up. "The initial sketch of the center, I'm imagining. I'd like your opinion." He unrolled the blueprints on the table, revealing the design of a large complex with green areas, classrooms, recreational spaces, and dormitories. Maria approached, her eyes scanning the drawings with growing interest. "It's impressive," she admitted, "but it seems—" "What?" he prompted when she hesitated. "It seems cold," she finally completed. "Perfect, functional, but without soul." Instead of being offended, the millionaire chuckled softly. "Exactly what I thought when the architect presented it to me. That's why I want your help to redesign it. We need a place that's like your home, small maybe, but cozy." The surprised look she gave him was worth more than all the successful negotiations of his career. It was the look of someone who, for the first time, saw something unexpected in him, not the calculating millionaire, but a man capable of listening, of learning, of changing. "I think we can do that," she replied, turning back to the blueprints, "with some major changes." And so, on that unlikely night, in the privacy of a luxurious study, an unlikely partnership began to take shape. A hospital housekeeper and a millionaire bent over architectural drawings, reimagining not only a building, but the concept of care for vulnerable children. And perhaps, although neither dared to admit it yet, also reimagining their own existences. The foster care center quickly took shape in the following months, transforming an abandoned lot on the outskirts of the city into a space of light and hope. Where before there was only cracked concrete and weeds, now stood a harmonious complex of low buildings organized around a landscaped central courtyard. Maria's influence was evident in every detail, the brightly colored walls adorned with murals by local artists, the sturdy yet inviting furniture, the curtains sewn by community seamstresses. There was nothing ostentatious or luxurious, but neither was there anything shoddy or makeshift. It was a place of dignity, where every element communicated to the children, "You matter." The millionaire surprised everyone, including himself, with his personal involvement in the project. It had begun as a grudging obligation to fulfill Maria's condition, but soon evolved into a genuine commitment. Every Thursday, without fail, he showed up at the center, often bringing his daughter with him. In the early weeks, the kids regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The tall man in expensive suits and a stiff posture seemed out of place among them. But gradually, as he sat on the floor to listen to their stories or awkwardly participated in their games, apprehension gave way to acceptance. It was on one of those Thursdays, 6 months after the center opened, that something significant happened. The millionaire had arrived earlier than usual. His daughter was at school, and he found Maria organizing an activity in the newly completed library. "Can I help?" he offered, taking off his jacket and hanging it carefully on a nearby coat rack. Maria looked at him with that subtle smile that had become familiar. "Sure, I'm sorting books by age group. The ones marked with green go on that shelf, the blue ones on the middle one, and the red ones on the top." He worked silently beside her for almost half an hour, appreciating the simplicity of the task and the tranquility of the space. The smell of new books, the occasional birdsong coming through the open window, Maria's calm presence, everything contributed to a sense of peace he rarely experienced. "I never thought I'd see this," Maria commented finally, breaking the silence. "What?" he asked, pausing with a children's book in his hands. "You, doing something so ordinary, sorting books like any other volunteer. Is that good or bad?" he questioned, realizing that her opinion mattered in a way he couldn't explain. "It's good," she replied simply. "It shows you're changing." He considered that for a moment. "I guess I am in many ways." The silence returned, comfortable in its familiarity, as they continued to work side by side. Suddenly they heard crying coming from the hallway, a deep, desperate sob that seemed to come from an old pain. Maria reacted instantly, but the millionaire was already at the door, moved by an instinct he didn't even know he possessed. In the hallway, they found a boy of about 8 years old, huddled against the wall, his body racked by sobs he was trying unsuccessfully to suppress. He was one of the new kids, having arrived only 2 days before, the son of a single mother who had been hospitalized with a serious illness, with no relatives who could care for him while she recovered. "What's wrong, honey?" Maria asked, kneeling beside him. The boy shook his head, refusing to speak, his clenched fists furiously rubbing his eyes to hide the tears. To Maria's surprise, it was the millionaire who approached, sitting down on the floor next to the boy, his expensive, suit in direct contact with the tile floor, something unthinkable months before. "You know," he began in a calm voice, "when my wife passed away, I used to cry like that too, alone, where no one could see." The boy peeked through his fingers, his curiosity momentarily overcoming his pain. "Why?" he asked in a choked voice. "Because I thought men weren't supposed to cry," the millionaire replied honestly, "that I needed to be strong, not show weakness. It was a terrible mistake." "Is my mum going to die?" the boy asked directly, the fear showing in every syllable. The millionaire didn't offer false assurances. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know she's getting the best possible care. And in the meantime, you're not alone." "But no one here is my family," the boy protested. "Family," the millionaire replied, choosing his words carefully, "isn't always just who shares your blood. Sometimes it's the people who take care of us when we need it most." His eyes met Maria's over the boy's head, a look laden with meaning. She, who had no obligation to his daughter, had shown more genuine care than many with blood ties. "You know what?" he continued, turning back to the boy. "I have a daughter who loves to draw. She's coming by later. Maybe you guys can draw together and you can make something to send to your mum in the hospital. Show her you're doing okay, helping her get better faster." The boy contemplated the suggestion, his sobs gradually subsiding. "Can I draw our house?" he asked. "So she remembers we have a place to come back to?" "That's an excellent idea," the millionaire confirmed, feeling an unfamiliar emotion tightening his throat. At that moment, watching him, Maria saw something shift in the man's face, as if a last invisible barrier was finally crumbling. It wasn't just empathy for the boy, but a genuine connection with his pain, perhaps because he had finally allowed himself to feel his own. The rest of that day unfolded with a new quality of presence. The millionaire remained at the center long past his usual time, participating in activities, talking to the older kids about their aspirations, helping the little ones with homework. When he finally had to leave, it was already evening. Maria accompanied him to the car, where his daughter was already waiting, having fallen asleep in the back seat after an afternoon of play. "You were extraordinary today," Maria commented as they walked through the silent parking lot, "especially with the new boy." "I just said what I wish someone had told me when I was a kid and lost my dad," he replied. "Back then, no one allowed me to cry. I had to be the man of the house overnight." "Is that why you built so many walls around yourself?" she asked. The question was direct, almost intrusive, but coming from her it sounded natural, as if she had earned the right to ask questions that no one else would dare. "Probably," he admitted after a moment of reflection. "I spent so much time trying to be invulnerable that I forgot how to be human." They had reached the car. The driver, noticing their approach, discreetly got out to open the door, but the millionaire gestured for him to wait. "Maria," he said, turning to face her directly. The soft light from the parking lot lamps illuminated her face in an almost ethereal way. "I want to thank you." "For what?" she asked, genuinely confused. "For teaching me how to be a dad. For showing me there's strength in vulnerability. For—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "For seeing something in me that I didn't even believe existed yet." The moment between them stretched out, charged with something unspoken, a possibility hanging in the night air. Maria was the first to pull back, taking a small step back. "It's late," she said, her voice slightly altered. "Your daughter needs a proper bed." He nodded, accepting the redirection. "Right. I'll see you Monday for the meeting with the new teachers." "I'll be there," she confirmed. As the car pulled away, the millionaire watched in the rearview mirror, the solitary figure of Maria still standing under the yellowish light of the parking lot. Something was changing between them, something that neither seemed ready to name, but that was growing silently like a seed under the earth, invisible but undeniably alive. Beside him, his daughter woke up briefly, murmuring sleepily, "Daddy, I like Maria. She makes you smile." "Really?" he asked, surprised by the observation. "Yes," the girl confirmed, already falling back asleep. "You never used to smile before. Now you smile, especially when she's around." The millionaire contemplated his daughter's simple words all the way home, feeling as if she had revealed a truth he himself wasn't yet prepared to fully face. A year had passed since that rainy night on the cold sidewalk. A year of transformations, so profound that sometimes the millionaire barely recognized his own life. The foster center was thriving, having expanded its services to include not only children temporarily separated from their parents, but also support programs for families in crisis, vocational training for single mums, and psychological counseling for the entire community. It had become a model studied by experts from all over the country, living proof that financial resources, when applied with genuine human care, could transform lives. Maria coordinated everything with a unique combination of firmness and sensitivity. The woman who had once cleaned hospital floors now managed a multidisciplinary team, negotiated partnerships with renowned institutions, and represented the project at international conferences. Her authenticity remained unchanged. She wore simple clothes, spoke plainly, and kept her feet firmly planted in the reality of the people she served. As for the millionaire, the changes were equally profound, though less visible to the outside eye. He continued to command his business empire, but with radically different priorities. He had implemented social responsibility policies in all his companies, drastically reduced his own compensation to increase the salaries of entry-level employees, and directed a significant portion of his profits to social projects similar to the original center. More importantly, his relationship with his daughter flourished. He was no longer a stranger in her life, but a constant and loving presence. They ate dinner together every night, spent weekends exploring parks and museums, and he himself tucked her into bed, reading stories from that worn book that Maria had given them. On that Sunday morning, the center was preparing for a special celebration, the anniversary of its first year. The central courtyard was decorated with colorful balloons and banners made by the children themselves. Long tables had been arranged under the trees, covered with white tablecloths and arrangements of wildflowers. An atmosphere of genuine joy permeated the air. The millionaire arrived early, accompanied by his daughter. They had brought an enormous cake, ordered from the best bakery in town, but made according to the girl's specifications. It has to be as colorful as Maria's house, not elegant like Daddy's friends' parties. Leaving his daughter involved in the preparations with other children, the millionaire looked for Maria. He found her in the office, reviewing some documents with a worried expression. "Trouble?" he asked from the doorway. She looked up, her face softening at the sight of him. "Nothing serious, just some budget spreadsheets for next quarter's expansion." "Can I help with that?" he offered, approaching her. "You're already helping more than enough," she replied, closing the folder. "And today is a day to celebrate, not to work." He agreed, watching her as she put away the documents. There was something different about her today, perhaps the simple but elegant dress that replaced her usual practical clothes, or the way she had pinned up her hair, letting a few strands frame her face. "You look beautiful," he commented, the words escaping before he could contain them. Maria seemed momentarily flustered, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "Thank you," she replied simply, without elaborating. A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind of silence that only exists between people who no longer need to fill every moment with words. "I never asked," the millionaire began after a few moments. "Do you have family? Parents? Siblings?" The question caught Maria off guard. "Why do you want to know that now?" she asked, her tone more curious than defensive. "Because I realize that after a year of working together, I know very little about your personal life," he admitted. "You know practically everything about me, but you remain a mystery." She smiled slightly. "There's not much mystery. My parents passed away many years ago. I have a sister who lives in another state. We talk occasionally. I never married, never had children of my own." "Why?" he asked, genuinely interested. Maria shrugged. "Life just went in other directions. I always worked a lot, at several jobs simultaneously. Relationships require time, dedication, just like children," he completed thoughtfully. "Yes," she agreed. "Ironically, I ended up taking care of dozens of children who aren't mine." "And is that enough for you?" he asked, his voice softening. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a silent communication that transcended words. "It was, for a long time," she replied finally. "But maybe—" Whatever she was about to say was interrupted by animated knocking on the door. The millionaire's daughter ran in, her eyes shining with excitement. "Daddy! Maria! You have to come see! The kids prepared a surprise performance for the party!" Maria smiled, the previous moment dissolving like mist in the sun. "We're coming, honey." The celebration unfolded like a dream. The children presented a play written by themselves, telling the story of the center from its conception to that moment. With the direct innocence of childhood, they portrayed the sad millionaire who learned to smile and the big-hearted woman who brought warmth to many lives. The audience of staff, volunteers, and family members alternated between laughter and tears. During lunch, sitting side by side at the head table, the millionaire and Maria observed the tangible result of their unlikely partnership. Children who had arrived traumatized now ran and played freely. Families who had been on the verge of disintegration now shared meals with renewed hope. Staff who had started skeptical of the philanthropic millionaire's intentions now treated him with genuine respect. "You've changed many lives," Maria commented softly, as if reading his thoughts. "We've changed," he corrected, "and mine was the one that changed the most." As the sun began to set, painting the sky orange and pink, most of the guests had already left. There were only a few staff members finishing the cleanup, some resident children playing in the last light of day, and Maria sitting alone on a bench under a leafy tree. The millionaire approached, carrying 2 glasses of juice. Alcohol wasn't allowed at the center. He sat down beside her, offering her one of the glasses. "Cheers," he proposed, raising his glass. "To the future." "To the future," she agreed, touching her glass lightly to his. They drank in silence, contemplating the nearly empty courtyard, the transforming sky, the distant sounds of the city beyond the walls. "Are you going to tell me now?" he asked finally. "Tell you what?" she questioned, turning to look at him. "What you were going to say in the office before we were interrupted. You said that taking care of the children was enough for a long time. But maybe—" He left the sentence unfinished, a silent question hanging between them. Maria took a deep breath, as if gathering courage for a leap in the dark. "Maybe life is showing me that there are other possible paths. Paths I never considered before." "What paths would those be?" he insisted gently. Instead of answering with words, Maria just held his gaze, a gaze that contained vulnerability, courage, and an unspoken question. The millionaire placed his glass on the bench, moving slightly to face her. "Maria," he began, his voice deeper than usual, "you've changed my life in ways I never imagined possible. You've taught me how to be a father, to be human again, to see beauty in simplicity, strength in vulnerability." She remained silent, her eyes fixed on his, her face illuminated by the last golden rays of the setting sun. "I don't know exactly," How or when it happened, he continued, but at some point this year, I realized that you've become essential to me, to my daughter, to our happiness. What are you saying? She asked, almost in a whisper. I'm saying that I don't want to just work alongside you anymore. I want to build something more, a family, maybe, if you're willing to consider such a possibility. It wasn't a formal proposal, nor a grandiose declaration of eternal love. It was something more honest, the recognition of a growing feeling, a possibility that they were both only beginning to glimpse. Maria placed her glass next to his, her hands slightly trembling. It would be complicated, she observed pragmatically. We come from such different worlds. Used to come from different worlds, he corrected softly. Now I'm not so sure. You taught me to value what really matters, and I've shown you that resources can be used to do good. Maybe our worlds aren't as separate as they seemed. She smiled, a full, unreserved smile illuminating her entire face. Your daughter would be happy. She's already asked several times why you don't live with us, he confessed with a slight smile. Says the house would be warmer with you. There. Maria laughed softly, remembering that first night so long ago. She's very wise for her age. So, he began, hesitant as a teenager on his first date. Would you consider it? In response, Maria simply extended her hand, intertwining her fingers with his, a simple gesture that said more than any words could express. In the quietness of that moment, under the gradually darkening sky, two human beings whom fate had, united in the most improbable way, contemplated a new beginning. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were no guarantees of happily ever after. There was only the silent promise to continue growing together, learning from each other, building something genuine and worthwhile. And in the end, maybe that was what really mattered. Not the perfection of a Hollywood ending, but the imperfect beauty of lives transformed by mutual care. The girl who had cried alone on the cold sidewalk had found not only safety, but a new form of family. The millionaire who had observed in the shadows had learned to come out of the darkness and embrace his own vulnerability. And the woman who had stopped to help without expectations of return had discovered that her capacity to give love was only matched by her capacity to receive it. That night, when the millionaire took his daughter to bed, the girl asked him to tell her a story. What do you want to hear tonight? He asked, already reaching for the worn book that Maria had given them. No, Daddy, the girl said, surprising him. I want you to make up a story about a lost girl, a kind woman and a father who learned to love again. The millionaire smiled, recognizing his own story in his daughter's words. I think I know one very similar to that, he replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. Once upon a time, in a big and hurried city where people rarely looked at each other. And so, in a mansion that was finally beginning to feel like a home, a father told his daughter the story of how they had all learned that the strongest bonds aren't always those of blood, but those we choose to create with courage, compassion, and a heart open to the unexpected. As for Maria, that same night in her small new apartment, closer to both the center and the mansion, she looked at the photo she had kept from that first day of the foster center, the millionaire and his daughter, both smiling next to her, forming an image that at the time had seemed unlikely, but that now seemed like the beginning of something beautiful and true. For the rest of their lives, they would remember that crucial moment on the cold sidewalk, a fleeting instant that by mere chance or perhaps by something deeper than chance had changed everyone's destiny. A silent testament to the fact that sometimes in the most desperate situations, all we need is for someone to stop, truly see us and reach out a hand. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive new stories every day.